Hey everybody, Todd Vandermite back here for another edition of Freedom Steel. We've got some breaking news. The 9th Circuit Court of Appeals has issued their decision in the California mag ban known as Duncan. More after the intro. All right, everybody, here we are. Todd Vandermite, former NRA contract lobbyist, Illinois gun law guru, the gun Santa or tactical Santa over on Reddit. And we've been waiting for a year. Just so happens that just yesterday, my good friend Costas Moros tweeted that it had been an anniversary of 1 year since Duncan. And lo and behold, evidently the Ninth Circuit en banc panel has him on their Twitter feed because today they released the decision in Duncan. And it's not a favorable decision, but that's what we all expected. So I'm going to give you the highlights here as I have read through the majority opinion. And it is about 50 pages of their anti-gunner reasoning. And I'm going to sum it up here. One of the other things you're going to hear is that evidently Justice Van Dyke has released a video that runs about 18 minutes, I think, in conjunction with his dissenting opinion, to where he evidently does some demonstrations and talks about some things. I have not seen the video as of yet, but it has spooled up a bunch of the majority judges to write a concurring opinion denouncing Judge Van Dyke's actions in this. And so I think that you're going to hear about the mag ban. You're going to hear about Van Dyke's video. They are just going to squeal like the little vermin that they are, much like the anti-gunners squealed when Justice Thomas used some of the FPC stuff in their animations and descriptions or drawings in the Cargill case. But number one, we lose. And we lose in some crazy ways. I will go on record as saying this is the first high profile case that Rahimi has just stuck it in the moon. Rahimi, I think, can be used to our advantages in some ways, but this circuit took very liberal leanings with how they applied the text tradition and history. So let's start off with the big things. One, mags are not arms. They call them accoutrements, and they sit there and go into this whole spiel about how the Second Amendment protects arms, not arms and accoutrements. Therefore, they say that it's not a trigger, it's not essential to the operation of the gun, therefore it can be regulated or banned. The second part of this is they go to that the case implicates both unprecedented societal changes or concerns and dramatic technological changes. And therefore, they sit there and say, so because of that, this is so outside of what was in 1791, we get to kind of hold this to a different standard of review and how they're going to deal with this. They go in and they bring up the gunpowder storage regulations, because what they say is, in using Rahimi, they sit there and say that, look, the governments have been regulating arms since the founding for public safety reasons. That is the catch-all. That because the gunpowder statutes were to protect the public at large, that's good enough. And they use that. They use trap guns, another old one that has nothing to do with this. They used the Statute of Northampton. Geez, Ray Charles could have seen that one coming when you start reading this one. And then they used the Bowie knife laws as so that this was not nearly as restrictive as any of that. So they go down those roads, and it is just that was all relevant. And then they talk about them being relevant, and then they go into the how and the why, and basically it's this bamboozlement of all around public safety. This is all about public safety. And if you read between the lines, when they talk about mass shootings and they talk about things, like giving people a chance to escape because they're reloading, it's all interest balancing. They bootstrap in interest balancing about that. Now, one of the funny things is they say on one side, hey, only having 10 rounds allows people to sit there and reload or force the shooter to reload, and therefore people can escape, people can take cover. And then they go on later in the opinion to sit there and say, oh, it's only a minor inconvenience for a person in self-defense to sit there and have to reload. So it's a very narrow infringement upon that. And they sit there and they bring back that they try to tie things to the use of a firearm in self-defense. That is not the test. We all know that's not the test, but that's what they try and do repeatedly. And then, if you'll remember, Judge Benitez sat there and talked about the F-150, that there are more magazine-fed semi-autos in the country than there are F-150s, and went to the common use test. Well, they get around the entire common use test, and they do it because they talk that, one, these are accoutrements, they're not arms, and then they talk about that these are especially dangerous uses of weapons. And they repeat that a couple of times. So what they are doing is they are going on and showing that if they don't have to deal with in common use, and they spend some time going into the in common use numbers, what's the number, and they pontificate that there are 176,000 fully auto machine guns in civilian hands, and that if the Hughes Amendment were to go away, would there be a number that then says all the state machine gun bans go away because they are now in common use? And that's what they do. To get around dangerous and unusual, they sit there and discard the in common use test, and they also likely they go to that these are not guns used in self-defense when you're talking about AR rifles and the type. So these are the things that they go. And to go back to that part about how the how and why fit, we discern two distinct traditions from legal regimes described above. First, the founding era gunpowder storage regulations established an early tradition of laws seeking to protect innocent persons from infrequent but devastating harm by regulating a component necessary to the firing of a firearm. Second, since the founding era, legislatures have enacted laws to protect innocent persons from especially dangerous uses of weapons once those perils have become clear. Interest balancing. And that's how they get away from dangerous and unusual, because they simply discount in common use. That's it. That's the long and the short of what Duncan is today. Now, this sets up an interesting twist of things. You've got Ocean State Tactical pending at the Supreme Court. That is a magazine ban coming out of Rhode Island. It's been hanging around out there with Snope. Now you have Duncan, which is a final decision from an en banc panel. Now, whether or not the way the en banc panel treated this thing is going to give pause, but you're at the end of the road. There's no appealing of how the en banc panel did it except to the Supreme Court. So I hope that doesn't get in the way of the Chiefs, thing about is there a procedural hiccup in the case or whatever. But now you have a final decision on the merits of a magazine ban. So if they are doing what many of us hope, that they are kicking Ocean State Tactical and Snope down the line to be granted cert later on for next term, you now have Duncan primed and ready. And Duncan is not in a procedural posture, much like Ocean State Tactical is. Duncan is a final merits decision. And the guys in California have already said they are going to apply for cert. I would hope they were all expecting this loss. It was just how were they going to lose? How bad was it going to be? How stupid was it going to be? Because this is grade A. These guys pole vaulted past retard and right over to potato. That's what we got here. So with that, that is the long and the short of Duncan. That will save you a ton of reading, except that with all the dissents and the concurrences, it is 147 pages. I've gotten through the majority opinion. I'm going to go back and read the dissents and see what they have to say in there that will be of interest to us. But as always, please like, subscribe, smash those buttons down below. Copy and paste this link in the forums, chat boards, or wherever. Share it with all your friends. And as always, frag out.